Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the episode today, we have Agi Keramidas. Agi, welcome.
Thomas, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm so excited to be here and looking forward to this conversation today.
It is very much my pleasure. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Definitely, thank you. It's a good place to start, actually. So, I'm Agi Keramidas. I'm Greek originally, living in the UK for the last 15 years. By profession, I trained to be a dentist, which I practiced for over 20 years. My passion took me to a different direction a few years ago, so it steered me towards personal development and podcasting in specifically. And I have been running a podcast, Personal Development Mastery, for close to 5 years now, and I am at 438 episodes. I think this gives a little overview of where I've been, where I am, and yeah, I try to keep it very short.
Okay. Well, you're about a year ahead of me, and I think about 100 episodes ahead of me.
Nice.
So, for
Congratulations.
fun, what's the next 100 episodes going to be like for me? Because you're about that ahead.
You're asking me how they're going to be for you. For me, I will tell you what happened for me the last 100 episodes and tell me if that applies to you, because I don't know where you are exactly. But for me, there was a big game changer which happened when I systemized the process of each episode. And that has happened, believe it or not, only the last year. Previous on, I was, all over the place.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I know what you mean, and I've made some changes lately, so maybe we could talk a bit about that at some point. But
for sure.
of all the conversations you've had, of all the topics you like to discuss, what would you say that your passion is?
This is a great question and a difficult one also, because it's difficult to give one answer, or at least one universal answer. So it might vary from time to time. One thing that, when you were asking the question, the first thing that popped up, among others, again, so I will honestly say this is the one what came up, was purpose, and living our, I would use the word again, purpose. it, so for some reason this comes up. So I don't know if that's what you wanted to discuss with me also.
That would be great. And it is something which I always ask about, and I think I've got some cliff notes in terms of good answers, but I'd love to know what yours is. So, how does one find their purpose?
Yeah, this is so good and common question, and I think there is an error in the way that this question is phrased by so many people. It's the word find the purpose. And don't get me wrong, I have tried to find my purpose for years. I was writing down exercises. I was even thinking that I'm going to prepare a speech about how to find your purpose, and by preparing for the speech, I will find mine. So it has been a quest of mine for quite a while. What I've come to realize is what I started saying about the using the word find, because find, and we have to be very careful, because the words that we use can really change our perception of a concept, or in this particular case, purpose. So in my ears, when I hear the word find, that implies that the purpose is somewhere waiting to be discovered. So it is already there and it's waiting to be found, like a rock waiting to be discovered. That's how I interpret the word find. So I suppose other people might see it differently, but that's what comes to me. And what I have come to realize is that purpose is not something you find. It's not what it is instead, and a better word is create. So create the purpose. And when I say create, I mean you create it with what you do, what you do with your life. It is an analogy that I would use for the purpose rather than finding it is in the same way that you compose a song or a poem. That is how purpose is um, uncovered. Maybe that is a better word than find. So I don't know if that gives you the answer to what you asked me, or I drifted onto a different direction.
I love the answer. And it's interesting because I give the same answer around the topic of the meaning of life.
Mm.
I say that you have to create your own meaning of life, not that there is one objectively for everyone. And I like the fact that I can now apply that to purpose. So, it's a follow-up question. In order to create your purpose, how does someone go about doing that?
You ask really the important questions, and I'm glad that you do. Um, I will tell you how it worked for me because it is easier to share by sharing my own experience with it. Some people might hopefully resonate rather than me giving the rules because again I wouldn't I don't like very much the absolute approaches that this is how to do it, this is how to find it, uh, and especially in personal development, which I've been involved so many years now. I've come to realize that there is not one universal solution or method or something that works for everyone. If there was, we would all know about it. No, nothing reaches everyone. So that is, I'm sharing that like as a preface. But for me, what happened with the purpose was, or the first stage of it, and that's maybe something that one can relate, was a curiosity about doing something. And in my particular case, was a curiosity about starting a podcast. That was back in 2018. Uh, I had another podcast before this one that I do. So back in 2018, I had the curiosity to start a podcast inspired by an event that I went to. And the event was nothing about podcasting, but there was a speaker that spoke about podcast. And I thought, wow, this is great. So there was like a spark of curiosity. Inspiration is also a good word to describe what I'm feeling. So there was an initial interest about podcasting for me. What, and I think this is maybe in a different form, it is the seed for purpose. I do believe that it precedes, when people say, oh, I found my purpose, there has been some initial stage of something stirring the interest and the person doing some steps towards it. And I think that's the also, I will digress for a moment only and say that taking the steps towards it is very important because that's what stops people from creating the purpose. They don't take action on what it is that they are inspired to do or curious about doing. So coming back, and I will try to conclude this answer. For me, curiosity to start a podcast and then taking action to start it despite my there was and still is to some extent the so-called imposter syndrome. I think, I don't know if you can relate, Thomas, there is always that voice who would listen to this or to me or whatever. However, I did it despite that, and when I took action on what I was curious about and inspired about, I found instantly. I do remember still the first time I recorded a podcast episode, I was buzzing then for hours. It was a great feeling. I was elated. I was so that for me was a very good indication that what, there's something here for me to keep on exploring. I like very much the phrase joyous exploration, and this carried me to doing more, to getting on a different level, doing other stuff. And that's how, for me, if I were to put the purpose, or the element of my purpose that is the most relevant to this conversation with the podcast, or the message I share through the podcast, I created it like that, and I am creating it. And that doesn't mean that it's set in stone and it won't change in the future. That's really the beauty about the. I used the word compose earlier. I think that is the beauty, because at some point the composition might change. Sorry for this very big, long-winded answer to your
I'm taking notes in
question.
my head, so I like the long-winded answer.
Great.
And my cliff notes of what you said were the first step is you have to be curious. The second step is that you need to take action on things that you possibly might be interested in. And
Mhm.
then the third step is actually to monitor how you feel about that thing. And that is kind of my only follow up, because I do think I don't have any problem in trying things that,
Mhm.
maybe I might be interested in that. I'll go find, do it and see what happens. But I'm actually not that conscious of how I feel about a particular thing. I might just be more kind of, I'm going to be determined and going to do this whether I feel like doing it or not. So, in your view, um, in order for it to feel like you created a purpose for yourself, how does someone feel? How did you feel? Perhaps might be a better question. If about knowing whether this was your ideal purpose or not.
I'm laughing because the knowing, especially when we use the word knowing, how does one know? It is something that is completely internal, and as such, it's very difficult to describe. When we know something, we know it, and I mean, we know it with every part of our body, not only with our mind, with our intellect. It is. Um, I will. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, that's where I would start. But do you want to direct me to a little bit more specific part of what you're asking, so I can give you a more precise answer? That's how I feel. I would ask for a clarification.
That's okay. And I think, again, I think you've touched on something, which is it may not be possible to know. And each person's reaction may be different, as you said, about the fact that there may not always be a right answer to something. In your case, it was the fact that you were buzzing about it. In my case with podcasting, I actually feel like there's no um, I don't feel any obstacles to doing it. When I don't know, you have to do your taxes or something, you kind of feel like that, oh, I really don't want to do that right now. Whereas when I'm doing podcasting activities, it's easy. It just flows, and I don't have that voice in my head saying, don't do it, go do something else. So, I don't know whether that helps you or not.
That very, very much. And actually, I wrote down now a few words that came to my mind the way you were describing it. And you mentioned the word flow. You are in flow. Definitely that happens. There are some, let's say, indicators that what you are doing is very much related to the purpose. And being in flow is definitely one of them. And when I say in flow, I mean what you were describing. You forget that you're hungry, you forget to drink, you forget to to go to the toilet. You just focus on what you're doing, and time flies, and you say, wow. That's one thing. Effortless is the word that came when you were saying. So there is no resistance, internal resistance. Oh my god, I have to do that. No one has to motivate you. There is like internal drive to do that. These are all, signs as far as I'm concerned. Uh, the word that I like very much to describe, I said earlier, I used the word buzz to express how my energy felt. But the word that really, I believe, expresses very much this state, and for me it is probably the biggest indicator that you are on the right track, is the word enthusiasm. When you have enthusiasm on something, that in my view is probably the best indicator. If you're enthusiastic about something, go ahead, carry on doing it. And enthusiasm, as I'm Greek originally, is a Greek word which literally means the God within or the spirit within. So being enthusiastic means that the spirit within expresses itself in some form. So it is a very, and now that I use the word spirit or God, regardless of any spiritual or religious beliefs, if we replace these two words with purpose, I think that is it is the purpose within expresses itself through us. Yeah, I think these are indicators that they are unmissable. I think you know them when you experience them. And thank you also, Thomas, for sharing that you have to also have the self-awareness to notice those feelings and not just let them pass on without reflecting on them and realizing that, oh, wait a minute, I was feeling this and that earlier on as a result of this.
Mm.
Of course, take note of it, definitely, because if it gets forgotten or not noticed, I think it's a shame. It's a missed opportunity to connect with something that is deeper within you, that wants to be expressed.
I love the answer. And your entheos reference, the God within, is that an Earl Nightingale reference?
Maybe it is. I don't remember when I first read it, but as I said, for me, knowing some of the Greek words, what literally they mean, it's quite powerful, especially with some words that, like enthusiasm, because yeah, people know what enthusiasm means, but not everyone knows what it truly means, what the etymology, and therefore what the word really means.
Okay. Well, I think um, our conversation about creating your purpose and about how when you realize you find it, it may be the case that your particular purpose or passion isn't either paid at all or paid very well, meaning it's difficult to make a living from this thing. And I think that applies to you and I. So if it is the case that someone does find their purpose, or I should rephrase, create their purpose, and it happens to be something that's difficult to make a living from, what are your thoughts on that topic?
Definitely, that's a great question, and yes, it does happen. And sometimes I think that it has to happen like that because in a way, we grow through it. The creation of the purpose, as far as I am aware, and reading successful people's biographies, it is not handed to them like that. Here is your purpose. Okay, I have achieved it. It is some a challenging period, and in this particular case, the fact that doing something that feels deeply fulfilling and feels aligned with one's purpose and not getting paid for it, it is one of the challenges to be overcome on the journey of growth, of carrying on the purpose. This is a general thought that probably applies to me also, since you share that, because definitely the podcasting, if we look at it as a business, it is not, it is a very small minority that actually manage to make a living. I don't mean making a couple of $100s a month. I mean making a living from the podcast that is let's say, a small minority. However, it is a challenge. I'm using that as an example, and because you asked about the question of, when you're living your purpose and you don't get paid from it, what are my thoughts? The thought is that you do what you have to do, both to maintain your passion and, and your survival. I mean, you have to be reasonable. You have to. There is no one answer suits. Or some people, there is this phrase which I understand it. I have done it in the past, but it's not a cure-all solution. The burn the boats, burn the bridges. Yes, it works, but sometimes you can't risk, your your children having food to eat because you decided that I'm going to quit my job and go all out, all in. Maybe it will work, but that's what I mean. For each person, they have to look at the situation and see what is it that I can do. Can I do less of my income generating work, or cut down and at that time increase that other one? What options there are? But again, I'm saying, Thomas, that I believe it is a part of the journey, the growth. There are some skills or some traits that are to be obtained in order, to for one to overcome that particular impediment that you just said and move on.
Yeah, I like the do what you have to do approach, and I certainly prefer it to just abandon your purpose or your passion altogether and just do what is safe. I certainly
Oh,
prefer that.
yes.
Um, you did mention in your introduction about the fact that you were in dentistry, and then your curiosity led you to podcasting. The question is around, did you um, try and create a different purpose? Did you try other things before you landed on this? And the reason why I ask is some people can be attempting to create their purpose for years before they find it.
Definitely, and I think it will go back for a moment to something I said earlier, that purpose is not something that is, in my view anyway, it is set in stone and never changes. So it probably will. I suppose that it will. Everything changes in the world, in the universe. Purpose, why not purpose also? So I think that is an understanding to have, that it might change. Hmm.
Okay. Well, this one's a selfish question because
Okay.
in one of your questions on your profile, it mentions how you were an introvert or
Right.
perhaps are an introvert and you decided to go into podcasting. So from one introvert to another, why is it that this activity, why do you enjoy it, given the fact that you are an introvert?
Yes, what a great question. When yeah, to begin with, yes, I am introvert as nature. However, the big difference with how I was like 8 years ago or something like that, was that I was a shy introvert that would remain introvert at all times. Right now, yes, you and I are introvert, or maybe I'm only saying it because you mentioned it. Introverted as maybe character trait, or one of the traits. However, the conversation we're having is not introverted at all. I think we even shared some vulnerable things about, how the business of podcasting was. So I don't think it is. So that is. And I lost my train of thought now with what I digress. So bring me back to the question, please.
Well, it's the concept of an introvert loving podcasting, and why do you
Yes,
love podcasting if you're an introvert?
yes, introvert for me, and that's what I started to say, and what the change has been that when I do podcasting, and that's how I see it, even right now, I do not exhibit the traits of the introvert. Not during this conversation. I have changed. Uh, so I have some right now traits of an extrovert, very much. Otherwise, it would be much more difficult to have not a conversation. Of course, we would have a conversation, but a conversation that would have some depth, especially since, like, half an hour ago we didn't know each other. So it is some of those things that yeah, this some of my thoughts on
Okay.
this question. I don't know if you want me to expand on it more, because you said it was a selfish question earlier, so
It was
I'm not
selfish
sure.
because I wondered why it was that it was appealing to you, out of interest more than anything. But for me anyway, um, although I am introverted, I love meaningful conversations with a very small groups of people, if
Hmm.
groups at all.
Hmm.
So perhaps if you had a friend on and we could speak three people, then I perhaps might enjoy that. But if it went to five or six people, something like that, and then when it gets to 10 people, I'm out. I'm not interested in that big group of conversation. Not because I'm afraid in any way, it's just unappealing to me because I suppose I've labeled myself an introvert. So what do you think about that?
I was about to ask you, do you go as guest on other people's podcasts?
Um, I I have done, but I prefer the host than I prefer the host activity than the guest activity.
Okay, that gives me also an indication, because the host activity, you have the ability to be as introverted as you want, because you ask questions. Basically, you some people don't even comment on the answers. They carry on asking questions, so you don't have to be really extrovert to do that. However, when you're on the other side of the microphone, like I am right now, that changes. I mean, you can still remain introverted, but I think the conversation would be a bit, maybe not as, let's say, interesting for someone who listens to it. So, I will try to answer your question as much as I can. That I like doing both myself. I like the ability to step out of this usual or habitual introverted trait that I have, and go out to, a different, in a way, when right now that I'm speaking to you, in a way, is not dissimilar to speaking in front of a crowd of people, to have a public speaking, because this, I don't know how many people will listen to it, probably more than how many you would fit in a room. So so this really allows some different parts of maybe your personality that wanted to express itself to come out. I hope this helps you as an answer, Thomas. I thought you had I had a personal, something I could share personally with you. So that was very much my answer for you.
Well, I think you have helped because, like I say, I haven't stopped asking about the purpose question in hundreds of episodes, and I kind of feel like I do have one based on your answer. So I think it's been a worthwhile conversation. For people who do want to check out your podcast or perhaps follow you, where do they go?
My podcast is called Personal Development Mastery. You will find it on Apple, Spotify, etc., YouTube, it's everywhere. Uh, if you want to connect with me through social media, you will find me also on social media. If you type my name, Agi Keramidas, there is no other Agi Keramidas on social media. I have a rather uncommon name, so you will find me. I'll be very happy to receive a message from you. Tell me that you found me on by Thomas's podcast, and I will be very glad to connect with you.
Would you believe me if I told you I was the only Thomas Green?
No, I had to think about it, but no, I don't think so. I'm afraid not.
You'd be right.
Are you?
Do you have any closing thoughts for our episode today?
Since we talked about purpose throughout, and actually, I will thank you very much for allowing and holding the space for this conversation. And I hope that whoever has listened to us so far has gotten something valuable and something actionable even more than that. And actually, I will close with what I just said about the actionable bit. So if you're listening or watching this right now and there was something the last half an hour that intrigued you, that inspired you, that stirred your curiosity to do something about it, then I will invite you to do something with it, to take some kind of action about it. It doesn't matter if it is a big action. It doesn't have to be. It might be as simple as going on Google and searching about what it is that you are curious about. Just do something, an action, take one action towards that direction, and you never know what might happen as a result of that. But please take action on what you heard today if something resonated within you.
Great closing thought. And Aggie, I have enjoyed our conversation. So thank you for being a great guest today.
A real pleasure. Thank you for being a great host.